The museum in Ossów, Poland, dedicated to the Battle of Warsaw in 1920, is now open.
Dzisiaj chcę wam podziękować również dlatego, że miejsca takie jak to przypominają, są znakiem na dwa sposoby ludzkich historii i historii narodu.
The Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, also showed his admiration.
To jest niezwykły moment, to jest święty moment dla pokoleń. Pokolenia marzyły, pokolenia czekały. My tutaj dzisiaj jesteśmy jako ich reprezentanci wiekuistości minionych pokoleń.
The Battle of Warsaw was one of the most important battles in Polish history, during which the tide turned in the Polish-Soviet War, leading to a Polish victory and an end to the newly formed Soviet Union's expansion into Europe until World War II. I am glad that this museum has been established. I am also glad that the Prime Minister said that this museum is the work of at least two governments, that is, the work of several political formations. In an age where politically motivated historical revisionism is rampant, from glossing over Soviet crimes to hallucinations of a multicultural Victorian Britain, commemorating and remembering history is of the utmost importance, so that he who controls the president may not, in fact, control the past. Donald Trump met face-to-face with Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. This meeting was part of Trump's wider push to end the war in Ukraine and, in his words, stop the killing.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal.
Much of the nearly 3-hour meeting was held behind closed doors. Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin one-on-one at the airport in Anchorage, where he took him to the presidential limousine.
We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do.
The most important part of the talks was the meeting at the Elmendorf-Richardson military base on the outskirts of the city. There, the leaders talked in private, and later in the presence of delegations from both countries. The Americans were represented by Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff, while the Russian side was led by the head of Kremlin diplomacy, Sergei Lavrov.
Another encouraging thing was Trump saying that the Europeans and Ukraine, President Zelensky, had to be part of this agreement. And that had not come through quite clearly again at Buddy.
Trump did not allow himself to be drawn into the Kremlin's mind games. He reiterated to Putin that the killing must stop in Ukraine, and he had to come to an agreement with the president of the very country he invaded. Donald Trump is trying, in line with his campaign promises, to initiate a peace process and achieve a ceasefire or long-term peace between Ukraine and Russia. Of course, there is a big question mark over what has been agreed, as neither president has disclosed any details. Immediately after the talks, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin appeared at a joint press conference. They did not answer journalists' questions.
Mr. President Putin.
In fact, throughout his stay in Alaska, Putin ignored questions by Western journalists about Russian war crimes in Ukraine. The outcome of the Trump-Putin talks in Alaska once again highlights that the process of trying to reach a peace agreement is very complicated, with many difficult issues at hand. Trump lays his cards on the table. The U.S. will not go to open war with Russia, as this is not in the U.S.'s interest. The U.S. wants to bring the war to an end, to achieve some kind of global order. During his 8 months in office, Donald Trump has done more for peace in Ukraine than the left-wing European establishment has done throughout the whole war. If he manages to bring about this just peace in Ukraine, I think Donald Trump would be a strong candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. Barack Obama once received it during his presidency, even though his country was fighting 2 wars at the time. Heavy fighting continues along Ukraine's front lines. Ukrainians still have to defend their land and people from the Russian army. Sumy, attack on a food market. Dnipro, shelling of the city and office buildings. Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Russian strikes. The war continues.
Security measures.
But Trump is not giving up on his peace mission.
Set up a meeting now between President Zelensky and President Putin. And myself, I guess, you know, I didn't ask you about it. Not that I want to be there, but I want to make sure it gets done.
Donald Trump left Alaska, convinced that peace in Ukraine is still possible, but that it depends primarily on Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. He will seek to bring together the two warring parties. "280 teams from 16 countries, 500 humanoid robots, and 26 competitions. Among them, boxing, soccer, high jump, gymnastics, and even dancing. This is what the first ever humanoid robot Olympics look like. It is an incredible opportunity for computer scientists and robotics engineers from around the world to prove that their synthetic athlete design is the best. But it is also a chance to conduct unique research on artificial intelligence. My most important task is to collect data on how professional athletes move. Then we can pass this information on to the robot manufacturer, who will teach them how the best athletes move. Thanks to this, perhaps in next year's games, the robots' movements will be much smoother and more elegant, similar to those performed by real athletes. So far, the robots' movements are slow and clumsy, but the technology is constantly evolving. Although a few years ago such competitions would have been unthinkable, today, robots are able to play soccer, and although they don't always do very well, their creators are optimistic. Through competitions, we test the stability and durability of our machines. We want them to be as good as possible before they find their way into people's households, so we still have a lot of hard training ahead of us. Training is therefore the most important thing, not only for human athletes, but also for robotic ones. However, robots do not train their muscles. Instead, they perfect their movements by collecting data and teaching their artificial intelligence models, which act as a kind of brain for the robot. We hope that soon our robots will be able to act and think independently and move faster. Human brains sometimes work very quickly and sometimes more slowly. We hope that in the future, the brains of our robots will be at least as fast as our own. Although investors and scientists involved in robotics and artificial intelligence see these technologies as a great opportunity, they also raise serious concerns. The main negative effect of the development of artificial intelligence is the loss of jobs for humans. Office workers are the group most at risk. On the other hand, the development of robotics allows for the construction of increasingly sophisticated machines that could perform complex physical tasks. However, today's Olympics show that, at least for now, human athletes are far superior to their tin-skinned counterparts.